Okay, I'd like to show you my approach on building out the organizational architecture. It starts with the foundation. We need to understand what the teams are, what the fundamental role of the organization is, whether it's product or service company, and the roles and responsibilities within all of those teams. If we have all of that, then in a brief workshop, we can work out an org chart that is effective and that runs synchronous to your overall product or service model. This is a what I call a four-dimensional analysis or XYZ-Axis development. By the X-axis, I'm talking team structure. The Y-axis, I'm talking people in the team. And the Z-axis is the workflow, the process, the interactions between the teams over time. And I want to start with the Z-axis. In this example, we're going to focus on a product company. Specifically, this will be electric vehicles because it can be extremely complex, and I want to illustrate the complexity and from the perspective of systems theory, how all teams are integrated with one another and how the organization itself is like this living, breathing organism where the most minute of decisions from the dark crevices of one corner of the company have an untold ripple effect across all other teams. And so on the z-axis, let's start with the concept of bringing a new product to market. This is going to start with product ideation. In other words, we're trying to answer what the market is demanding. There will be a level of market strategy. In other words, how do we position the idea within that market? There will be a sales strategy. Can we sell the idea within the market? And with that chronological approach, that's how we start to build the Z axis. So, following sales, marketing, and product strategy, and an approval to take the next steps to bring this product to market. In this case, you're going to bring in program management. Program management takes the idea and starts to amass the other stakeholders within the organization to bring that idea into a proof of concept and further into engineering design and onwards to production. In this organization, we're going to envision that manufacturing is likely in-house. And so a lot of these activities, excuse me, a lot of the activities will be based on that vertical integration. So you bring in the program manager for management team, and they're going to function as a third party. They will take global management of the program budget, schedule, and scope, maintaining quality of that scope the entire duration of the program. Program meaning it consists of multiple projects, because as I said, these can be extremely complex. So once the PM team picks it up, it's also pitched over to an engineering team who starts industrial design, and there's an iterative design process between that industrial design and the beginnings of prototyping. And then beyond prototyping, if you need to build something, you need parts to build it. So you're going to introduce supply chain processes, and you're going to start building supply chain relationships. And so as you can see, once you start introducing all of these teams, there are feedback loops with all or some of the other teams. So I've just added the fact that we have procurement processes that need to be managed, and we need to execute short run POs. That means low volume parts for these prototypes. And we're going to start getting competitive quoting and sourcing out of our supply chain relationships. We're going to evaluate tooling processes. Do we want this injection molded? Do we want this cast? How do we want these tools? And that's going to impact long run costs. The program management team is going to manage phase gates in a product development life cycle. We're going to have to do some sales pipeline planning. We're going to have to look at pre-orders. There's going to be some marketing events such as teasers and buzz and media content, maybe some press releases. And um, from the product perspective, we're going to have to keep an eye on the competitive landscape to make sure we're not just mimicking something or someone's not catching up with us in this whole concept as it develops. We're going to add another stage of this chronological sequence of events. This assumes that we've gotten through prototyping and now we have our eyes focused on production or high volume manufacturing. There's a lot that goes into this. We're going to have to look at design validation reports. We're going to have to do FEAs or finite element analyses on these vehicles. We're going to have design reviews and design release. This release goes to suppliers. Meanwhile, we'll be getting production quotes and cutting POs for those suppliers. We'll be performing multi-bid exercises to cost out the bill of materials. We're going to validate lead times. Our prototyping design that we just built is going to be validated back to the original intent of the product idea. There may be some compromises, which is why the production vehicle never looks like the original prototype that you see at the car shows and stuff like that. Program management continues to manage phase gates and approvals. We have sales pipeline planning. We've got content creation, pre-launch marketing activities. We have brand management and guidelines to assess and to develop. And we start to maybe develop all of the accessories and bolt-on components that go with these vehicles. Once you have the parts, once you have the vehicles, you have to have a place to put them. And so we have to develop a warehousing facility. We have to plan that facility. So it's the place to put the parts. And then once we have a place to put the parts, we have to move those parts around that place that holds the parts. We may have some pick, pack, and ship fulfillment that happens within the warehouse for those accessories. From an engineering perspective, there's going to be a lot of document management. We've got to get parts numbered in a consistent way that can be uploaded into our ERP systems. We're going to start setting expectations with our supply chains. And then we're going to start preparing for industrialization or manufacturing and assembly. And again, this assumes vertical integration. So we're going to have to get our WMI registration. Ooh, I misspelled registration. That's frustrating. Ooh, I'm so OCD. I don't like that. But we have to manage material flow of everything in the warehouse. We've got all these kinds of activities. Design for assembly, design for manufacturing. We have to ensure that the product that's being manufactured in short runs on our new manufacturing line is being assembled correctly to the design intent. We're executing POs. We're developing stop production alert processes, for example, but there are all kinds of other processes that the PM team would be involved in spearheading. We'll be looking at packaging materials from a brand perspective, manuals development, co-branding, go-to-market launch activities. We're going to be ensuring that the product we're assembling on the line right now meets its cost requirements, which allows us to hit the MSRPs that we really need to be competitive out there, and that grade walk that we've done in our previous marketing research in the competitive landscape. Then we've, of course, got to test and validate all of these products, and that could be test and validation back along all of the phase gates of the vehicle as it's gone from prototyping to engineering validation to design validation to production validation. And now we've got um, short run assembly on the line. We have to make sure that our manufacturing technicians are all consistent in how these things are being put together. We've got all kinds of different testing, form, fit, finish, and functional testing from our suppliers. We need to make sure everything meets the intent, meets the aesthetic requirements of our product requirements document that was created previously during product ideation. We have inbound quality control. We've got in-process quality control. We've got final quality control. And you'll see all of these as we bring in our QA, QC activities. We will have with manufacturing engineering team developed our kitting, our jigging, our sub-assemblies for all of the different componentry that goes into the vehicles. We'll be developing work instructions so that anybody off the street can come in on day one and know how to assemble a certain piece of this vehicle. We'll be doing time studies to make sure our tact is on point so that we can meet our manufacturing cost requirements to keep in tandem with the BOM or bill of materials, our total cost of goods down so that our MSRP is still profitable. We'll be performing exercises with our suppliers, such as a PPAP, which is basically a documentation and quality control process of the parts that we receive from them. Once we have all of these materials assembled and we've passed all these um, final QC checks, now we have to ship this stuff out to customers. So enters logistics and distribution. That will be tied off with the sales strategists for forecast planning. So we know how many are going to ship and where they're going to go and what's the prioritization of which vehicles go where, et cetera, and so forth. We'll have customs and shipping regulations, especially in the EV space. You've got all kinds of certifications for lithium batteries, et cetera. We'll have packaging engineering. We need to understand, will these vehicles be shipped in a knockdown fashion so that at the dealership there's going to be some sort of final assembly, or are we shipping them a 100% totally completed product? And this feeds into our shipping densities. How do we ship these vehicles in the most efficient way possible? We'll be working with 3PL, third-party logistics firms to help with moving all of our parts around to the various warehouses we may have and between all of the suppliers we may have. We've now got uh, product in the customer's hands, and once the customer starts touching it, we're going to start really getting the true lessons learned, because the customer is going to start breaking stuff that, even though we tried to do all of the test and validation we could, the customer will always find something we weren't aware of. So we're going to have a series of continuous improvement exercises. We have the introduction of a service and warranty process. This is going to bridge back to sales from the perspective of customer service, but it's also going to be dealership service. You think of maintenance and repair, and we will have issued warranties on various components or the whole component or the whole final unit, and people will start calling in these warranties. So we're going to have processes around that. We're going to start quantifying metrics around what is breaking and in what frequency so that we can give feedback to our supply chain. We can give feedback to our manufacturing team, and we can start taking incremental steps for improvement so that we can reduce the frequency of those recalled parts. All this while, we've got the PM team managing all of these teams, and every little decision that is made is going to affect the cost. It's going to affect the schedule, the scope, and the quality thereof. And so the PM has to function as that third party, because we can't grade our own homework. We have to be kind of outside of the politics that we all know happens during all of these things, and enters the finance and accounting realm that works with the PM team to manage cash flows. They're also going to be working on other finance options, such as dealer flooring, which allows our dealers to take multiple orders without having to pay up front, and they can take a financing plan on multiple units, put it on the floor, sell it, and then pay us back within a reasonable amount of time. That becomes a win-win for both of us. Good net terms. You've got sales forecasting, you've got product launch activities. Events management. Now that you've got some units out there, you want to show them off, so you've got to get those across the country and the teams and manage those. Excuse me. You've got your MSRP validation, and so all of this stuff is just a very complex and integrated team structure. It's very matrixed. You got human capital management. That's kind of this overarching concept for all teams. It's the people, the resources that are involved in manufacturing this stuff and shipping this stuff and managing this stuff. So there are budgets to manage. You have your capital expenditures, you have your OpEx investments. In finance and accounting, this is where it all loops back from this kind of linear chronological concept to forming a circularity of this system. And that's the systems theory coming back into play, because at the tail end of this, what appears to be a linear process, there are decisions to be made. What are the dividends we break out from our profits versus the retained earnings reinvested back into the organization? Those retained earnings could be um, developing a new product. It could be investing in new facilities to expand. It could be expanding our operational expenditures so we can scale the teams up so that we can start a second shift to increase production because demand has overrun what we previously thought it might be. And so these are all good things to manage. So once we have that systemic process down, we have now identified our Z-axis. The next step is to align teams with the fundamental steps along that process. And so your X-axis is building your teams. You're going to apply the teams to the fundamental requirements of the product development process. You're going to, for example, line up product ideation with a product management team, your marketing strategy and all of those activities with a marketing team. Likewise with the sales team. Likewise with the program management team. You've got engineering and test and validation in their team. And traditionally, these are called silos, but in my organization, we never call them silos because silos implies that there's no communication between these teams and they kind of function on their own. That cannot be the case in any functional organization. I don't care what that organization is. So um, you've got all of your operations teams here, the supply chain, manufacturing, QA, QC. You've got warehouse and materials, service and warranty, logistics. And you've got under your more administrative arm on the finance side, you've got finance and accounting, you've got HR and IT, but then you have to apply leadership accountability zones. And so this is where you assign your executive leadership their particular teams of responsibility. So we've got in this particular case, and this can change based on organizational philosophy, vision, mission, values, and the market entry strategy of any organization. These can change, but these are, as an example, your product and marketing teams here would run under a chief marketing officer. Your sales team would go under a chief revenue officer. I just put the PMO under a chief administrative officer, which may also encompass the HR and IT teams, but may not. Uh, the PMO could also go under the chief technology officer, which has the various engineering teams, test and validation team, and then you've got a chief operations officer who, in this kind of organization, really has the bulk of the human capital because there's so many things that fall under operations once you've taken that design development project and handed it off to an operational environment. Then under the chief financial officer, you've got finance and accounting, HR, perhaps IT. IT can go under chief financial officer many times because uh, financial software and applications are highly integrated across the organization with your ERP systems, but also your human resource management systems if you have an HRMS system out there, et cetera, and so forth. And so now that you've applied your executive leadership and just a top level concept of what these teams are, you have your Y axis. This is the deep dive into the teams. And these are just very basic kind of generic placeholders for these teams. Just to show an example, they're all going to have their various levels of technicians and specialists and management and directorships and this, that, and the other, junior, senior, mids. They're going to have um, and they're not all even across the teams either. Engineering team might have various levels of uh, junior, mid, and senior level people that um, function as a third party out in test and validation, and they don't report to the exact same management. But this is where you get into some serious workshops to understand the a very much more deeper dive into the roles and responsibilities and the interactions between all of the teams at a very specific level, so you can understand the touch points on the inbound and outbound outputs and inputs and all of that information and who's going to manage that. But for example, here on the, let's just take, the sales team. You might have an international sales team that might consist of various levels of management and reps. You've got regional management. You've got inside, outside sales. You might have channel marketing that's conducted within the sales team. You've got customer service reps. On the operations side, you may have purchasing clerks, manufacturing techs, warehouse management, QC techs, shipping and receiving, service management, inventory specialist, operations management. You may have a WMS or warehouse management system software package that someone's going to be administering. You've got your admin, manufacturing technicians, assembly techs. You may have someone focused on customs to break stuff out of the customs ports once they come in from overseas. If you're importing goods, you've got shipping or receiving, et cetera, and so forth. So that's the concept after you apply roles and responsibilities. And that's the four-dimensional take on organizational development, XYZ-Axis, to help build your org foundation. If you have any questions, please reach out. Go to parabolic-strategy.com and contact us. Look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.